All right, it's 8:15, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to my class, Making That Emotional Connection. I am so excited to teach this class because this is my favorite class that I teach because I get to share with you one of my favorite K-dramas. But it also makes such a good point, and I love diving deep into how to make your characters fall in love, and that is what this class is all about. So let's just jump right in. I tend to go a little long on this class, so I'm going to kind of dive through it as fast as I can to hopefully have some time for questions at the end. So what happens if you don't make that emotional connection with your characters? Well, number one, readers won't believe that they're actually in love. Number two, you can end up with a shallow story or a story that readers say it's insta-love, and that can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. And what I'm talking about is the bad thing. So some people complain about insta-love. What they're really complaining about is there is no emotional connection between these two characters. How can they have this, stars in their eyes for this other person if they've just seen them and had absolutely no interaction with them, right? And so that's what they're saying when they complain about insta-love. So a romance is all about the change in relationship between your characters. So let's look at some of these popular tropes and what the change is. Enemies to lover, they start out as enemies and they end up as lovers. That's pretty obvious, right? So alpha male, he starts out saying, I don't need love, and he ends up at the end, I can't live without you. Boss employee trope is we must say professional, but by the end of the book, they have this intimate relationship. Social class, we cannot interact because of our two classes. And then by the end of the book, they can't stay away. Second chance, there's some distance there because of hurt or something that has happened in the past, but by the end of the book, they are closer than they ever were before. So every romance arc starts closed off with love, and by the end of the book, they are fully in love. And what I mean by closed off, you can have a character that's in love with your other character. I'm reading The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams right now, and both characters are secretly in love with each other. But they cannot have this relationship because they are friends and they're just trying really hard not to destroy that friendship. So that's what I mean by they're closed off by love, and then they're fully in love by the end. So it's really important to show where your characters are starting because you need to show that progression in the relationship. And a mistake I often see in romance is in your head, your characters are already in love, right? You love these characters and you know they're perfect for each other and you just want to write all the lovey-dovey stuff. And you forget to show that they are closed off to love in the beginning of the book. So it's really key to show that distance between the two of them before they come together and are in love. So how do we get from closed off to in love? This is where building that emotional connection comes in. So technique number one is layering emotional connections. And this is by layering small ones that grow over time in your book to becoming bigger, grander gestures near the end. And you're just layering these things line upon line so people see, they're making these connections over and over and over. So some examples of this would be showing somebody caring about somebody else, helping somebody else, laughing with each other. These are things that form these emotional connections. And these are not only things you can do between your romance couple. These are things you can do between anybody in your book. If you have siblings that have had a falling out, and by the end of the book you want them to be close together again, you can do these emotional connections to pull them together. Technique number two is the setup and the payoff. And I absolutely love this because it takes a little foresight when you're writing, or you can go back if you're a pantser and you're like, I need to go back and put something in. You can go back and do that. But you need to do a little setup and then later on do a payoff, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So one thing that forms an emotional connection would be giving flowers. That's a nice thought, right? Very sweet. But it doesn't have any setup and payoff. But if you give the favorite flower, then you have to set that up first. First, he has to find out what her favorite flower is before in the book, and then later on, he can give her that favorite flower, and that makes a little bit more of a payoff. But even more meaningful, if she has a favorite plant, and every year on her birthday, her mother would give her a favorite plant, but now her mother has passed away. Maybe he can leave that favorite plant on her desk for her birthday. That's something that can even be more meaningful, but that takes a lot more setup, right? You have to set that up first, and then that plant can be a symbol, and it can be meaningful in the book. Another example is he's stranded, and she needs to rescue him. That's a nice act. That can become emotional connection. But let's make it more meaningful. Maybe she's rescuing him at a bad time for her. She's having a lot of stress, and she has to leave something important to her to go get him. Or make it something even more important. Maybe she has wanted to get a job for a long time, and now she has an opportunity to interview for this job, but she has to leave her job interview to go save him. So that makes it even more meaningful. Technique number 3, make it more powerful by using even though. So remember my example about the plant on the desk? So maybe make it an enemies to lovers situation, where even though she took his promotion, he left that plant on her desk as a kindness to her. So make it even more powerful through even though. Here's another example. Even though he fired her, she cares for him when he's sick. So showing that kindness to him, even though. Even though they are enemies, he covers her with the blanket. And it makes it more powerful that she's asleep and she doesn't even know who covered her with the blanket, right? So you want to remember the dance. Romance is all about a series of forward steps and backward steps. So don't forget the backward movement, because without that backward movement, there is no dance, right? And I know we as romance writers, we love that forward movement because we want them to fall in love, and we love all these feelings and everything. But if you don't have that pullback and that backward step every once in a while, then it makes the forward movement less meaningful. So remember that. All right, I'm gonna show you some examples from Crash Landing on You, which is a Korean drama on Netflix. This is about a wealthy South Korean woman who crash lands in North Korea. So at the beginning of the book, all the female main character wants is to go home. That is her goal, and she will do anything to get home. By the end of the series, she wants to be with the main male character, and that is her main goal, and that is all she wants. For the main male character, at the beginning, he is not open. He has trust issues. I mean, she could be a spy for all he knows. At the end, he learns to open himself up to this relationship. So together, there's no relationship, there's trust issues, and her goals are not related to him, and at the very end, they are fully in love. So before this scene, we are going to see Se-ri, who's our female main character, is stranded in North Korea. Captain Ri, who is our main male character, has taken Se-ri into his home to shelter her. He must go to work, so he is showing her how to get in contact with him if she has an emergency. Allowing her to stay in his home, which is really, really a dangerous thing, right? They're in North Korea, and if she is found out, he could get in trouble, and she could get in major trouble. Main male character instructs her on how to use the phone. And then you see how pampered the female main character is. She needs shampoo. She needs scented candles so that she can take a bath, and all this thing. And then the main male character, he's patient, although he hangs up on her, which is really funny. But he's patient with her, even though she calls him repeatedly for something as stupid as how to take a bath. So things that form an emotional connection, he is taking her in, he is being patient with her, and he is helping her. So I want you to think about items in your book that could become symbols. What is a physical item in your book that could become symbolic later on? There is something introduced in this clip that will become a symbol later on, and I'll show you what that is. So we don't know this is a setup yet, but you can do things like this in your book where you're setting something up for something later on that will become more meaningful. All right, so before this scene, Sayri has finished her bath and the power goes out. Captain Ree isn't home yet. Female main character gets frightened. The power doesn't usually go off in South Korea, so she's not expecting this, and it frightens her. Main male character comes home. The power goes off all the time in North Korea, so he is not thinking that she would be frightened by this. And he brings her this candle, which of course has now become this symbol between the two of them. Even though she's pampered and asking for stupid things, he goes out of his way to bring her this thing that she has asked for. Female main character cries, and I think it's really important to note he does not pull her into his arms. At this point, their relationship has not progressed to that point. And so it shows that pullback. It shows that they don't have that kind of relationship. So he just stands there while she's crying, right? But this is a setup for another larger payoff later on. So holding back is always a setup for a larger payoff later on. Because later on, by the end of the book, they are not holding back. They're going to hug, they're going to kiss, they're going to do all sorts of things no matter what the steam level is in your book. So holding back is always this setup for a larger payoff later on. This also showcases the change in the relationship. He is distant emotionally from her. He will not hold back at the end. The things that form an emotional connection: giving her shelter, showing compassion, showing patience, and he tries to make her happy with a candle. All right, before this scene, Captain Rhee is leaving, and some of his soldiers are going to take Seri across the border. So this is him saying goodbye to her. Disinfectant for her scrape. So the main male character is showing kindness to her. Even though he's trying to show indifference to her, he actually does care about her. He's still distant. He won't even tell her his name because he thinks he's leaving and he's not ever going to see her again, right? But she shows appreciation for the gifts, even though she's pampered and used to really expensive stuff, and this stuff probably isn't very expensive. She shows appreciation for that. And the setup makes all the difference here, because if he had brought her into his home and just gone out and bought her shampoo and conditioner right away, it wouldn't have meant as much as her calling him repeatedly asking for these things. Now it means a little bit more. So forming that emotional connection, gift giving, showing kindness and gratitude on her part. Before this next scene, the plan to get Seri home failed and she was discovered. They lie and say she's his fiance named Samsuk. She is shopping with some women from the village when they get separated. They do not touch, which is really important. So both candle scenes work together for this larger payoff. This scene would not have meant as much without this candle becoming this symbol, this scented candle, right? All right, so main male character is worried. He rushes off to save her. He lights this candle and holds it up, and then once she comes to him, she has tears in her eyes, so she really, you can see that emotion on her face, and but neither one touches, which is, again, going to be a larger payoff when they finally do touch. So things that form that emotional connection, showing concern, rushing to her aid, this meaningful act, this gratitude, and showing emotion. So before this next scene, Captain Rhee is once again trying to get Sayri home. They're on a train and it breaks down, so they must spend the night in a field. Starts out the scene where he's being kind. He gets a potato from the fire for her, and the female main character compliments him and tentatively kind of puts a feeler out about his life. Has he thought about, being a father and having children and things like that? He is distant with her. He thinks about one of his past emotional wounds, but doesn't tell her about it. But she opens up to him at that moment, and she actually comes out and admits she once thought about suicide, which is a major revelation, right? It's a major intimate detail of your life to share with somebody else. And she's doing this even though he is being distant with her. And so forming an emotional connection, that kindness to her, the gratitude she shows, the compliment she gives him, the consoling him, and then the intimate revelation to him. So she's opening up to him even though he is distant with her. So before this next scene, Sayri must get a passport photo to sneak out of the country with a sports team going to Europe. See her, she puts herself out there by suggesting they take a photograph together. He hesitates for a moment, then he says no, and the female main character kind of backpedals and says, oh, that's all right. She wants a photo, even though he's been distant with her. So before this next scene, this happens later on in the drama, but this is the rest of this story. This is directly after what we just saw. Her knowing, right? So if he had said, yes, let's take a photo together, this wouldn't have meant as much, right? This is a small payoff for this photograph scene. Taking a risk and showing you care are the things that form the emotional connection in that scene. But for this scene, Captain Ree is saying goodbye once again to Sayri before the soldiers take her to the airport. He is not going to take her. More holding back. He's still holding back. She put herself out there and is asking for a hug and confesses that she's going to miss him and she's going to think about him when they're apart. And he refuses. But this is also a setup to something else that's going to happen in a minute. Things that form an emotional confession, the confessing to him that I'm going to think about you, not and I love you, but I'm going to think about you. Humility, she is lowering herself in order to do this, and her gratitude to him. All right, before this scene, trouble happens on the way to the airport, and now we find out why Captain Ree has refused to take her to the airport. so trouble happens on the way to the airport. The payoff when we see Captain Ree come to the rescue. Now we know why he wouldn't take her to the airport. He asks her, "Are you hurt?" So he's showing concern for her. And main male character sacrifices himself for her. He doesn't die, don't worry. So this is increasing the gestures to show an increase in emotional connection. Even though she's from the South and he knows their relationship will not work, he risks everything to save her. So things in here that form an emotional connection: protecting, showing concern, and sacrifice. So I love this part. Before this scene, Captain Ree goes to the hospital. Say Ree goes to the hospital with Captain Ree. Give him her blood. So even though she may not have another chance like this to get home, she stays to save him anyway. The things in this scene that form that emotional connection: protecting, showing concern, and sacrifice. These are exactly the same three things that he showed to her on the previous thing. So reflecting that in your book, if you can find a way to reflect those things back at each other, then you are really forming a great emotional connection between your characters. All right, before this scene, Sayri waits outside of the operating room for Captain Ree. About him, right? She wants his connection with his things, even if he's in the other room. And she finds the photo that he refused to take with her, but he secretly got an extra one, and she gets emotional about it. So this is the second payoff for the photo, where she learns that deep down inside, he does actually care about her. So things that form an emotional connection: the concern, the waiting for him. She wants this connection by going through his things, and then she gets emotional when she finds this photograph. So this is the last scene we're going to see. Before this scene, Captain Ree yelled at Sayri when he found out she did not go to the airport. Instead, she stayed there and gave her blood to save him. In this scene, he seeks her out. He wants to make sure he apologizes for what he did. They're both worried about each other, and they show that worry to each other. And then he marvels at her that she did this thing, that she gave up something so huge. This was her whole goal, to get home, and she gave that up to save him. And then, of course, we have the kiss. So in forming an emotional connection, showing worry, apologizing, accepting the apology, marveling on his part, and then the physical affection that he shows. The kiss is one of the biggest payoffs, but be sure to set it up properly. This is the first time he has shown any forward movement towards her. All of the time previous to this, she is the one that's been showing any kind of forward movement to him. So it makes it much more meaningful that he is the one that leans down and kisses her. So remember that key is the change. You have your starting point and your ending point, and you want that relationship to change between the two of those things. This is just a list of things that I came up with that can grow an emotional connection. This is not exhaustive, so you can find lots of other things that can grow that emotional connection, but if you want to just snap a picture of this, it can get you started with some ideas that might help you in forming that emotional connection in your characters. And here is my email. You can email me with any questions that you may have. We don't have any time for questions, but I wanted to tell you that I do have a teachable course called the Writing Gals Academy. It is set up on a subscription monthly basis. It's only $9.95 a month, but if you email me, I will give you a month free. And so you can email me and say, I want a month free for your Writing Gals Academy, and I will do that for you. Thank you guys so much for coming to this class.